arrogant millionaire's heir attacked a pregnant waitress. Her husband's truth shook him. What happens when unchecked arrogance collides with hidden strength? Today, you'll discover a story where pride crumbles, justice strikes without violence, and a single truth turns a tyrant into a trembling man. Stay with me until the end, because by the time we finish, you'll see why kindness, courage, and truth can shatter the arrogance of even the wealthiest heir. The Imperial Hotel stood like a temple of luxury, towering glass reflecting the night sky as though the stars themselves bowed to its wealth. Inside, chandeliers burned with golden fire, polished marble gleamed like a frozen lake, and velvet curtains draped the walls in royal silence. Every detail whispered of excess, of power. Guests arrived in sleek black cars, stepping onto red carpets as valets bowed. Women in shimmering gowns brushed past men in tailored tuxedos, their laughter as crisp as champagne bubbles. Crystal glasses clinked and the soft notes of a string quartet floated above the chatter like perfume in the air. To most, it was a night of elegance. To a few, it was a cage gilded in gold. And among the silent figures weaving through this ballroom of pride was Clara, a young waitress. Her uniform was plain, her shoes worn from endless hours of service. But what drew every eye that lingered on her was not her attire, it was the gentle swell of her belly, the undeniable sign that she carried new life. Clara was 7 months pregnant, and every step she took was heavy with exhaustion, yet lit by a quiet, unshaken dignity. Her smile was faint but real. Though life had pressed her into corners of hardship, it had not crushed her spirit. Each tray she carried, each glass she refilled, each polite nod she gave to those who barely noticed her existence, it was all for the child she carried. A child she promised would know warmth, love, and the chance to rise beyond the shadows she endured. But in that world of glitter, not all hearts were kind. At the far end of the hall lounged Adrian Beaumont, only son of the hotel's wealthy owner. Adrian was young, handsome in the way magazines adored, and spoiled in the way only limitless money can create. He had never known hunger, never known fear, never known the weight of sweat earned by labor. To him, the world was a stage where he was both actor and king, and everyone else mere props for his amusement. His arrogance was not quiet. It was loud, flamboyant, and cruel. He sat with a circle of friends, heirs, trust fund babies, socialites who laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Adrian boasted of deals he had never made, mocked workers who passed too close, and raised his glass as though the world existed only to toast his name. The staff avoided him when possible, for Adrian's reputation was sharp, a tongue that cut, a temper that burned, and a belief that money excused all sins. But fate, as it often does, placed Clara directly in his path. Clara approached his table, balancing a tray of crystal glasses filled with deep red wine. Her steps were careful, her body straining slightly under the weight. She moved past Adrian's chair, but the heel of her worn shoe caught the edge of the carpet. The tray wobbled. Clara steadied it in time, but one crimson drop leapt from a glass and landed near Adrian's immaculate cuff. Just a drop, barely visible. Yet in Adrian's world, it was an insult. His laughter stopped. The air around the table stiffened. Clara's heart thudded, her breath catching. She opened her mouth to apologize, but Adrian was already on his feet. "You filthy, clumsy girl. Do you know how much this suit costs?" Gasps rose around the table. Clara bowed her head, trembling, whispering, "I'm so sorry, sir. Please forgive." But Adrian's arrogance, already inflated, demanded a spectacle. With a swift, merciless kick, he struck her across the stomach. The tray shattered against marble as Clara collapsed, arms wrapping protectively around her unborn child. For a heartbeat, the hall froze. The quartet's music faltered. Conversations halted. Guests stared wide-eyed as the sound of glass still echoed like breaking bones. "She's pregnant," someone whispered. "Did he just—" Another gasped. Clara's face paled. Her lips parted as though to cry, but no sound emerged. She forced herself upright, trembling, yet unbroken, her eyes shimmering with both fear and defiance. She would not let him see her crumble. Adrian sneered, brushing at his sleeve as if shaking off dirt. "You people like you," he hissed, "should remember your place." And then, footsteps, heavy, measured, echoing like drums of war across the marble. Every head turned toward the great entrance of the hall. A man walked in, his presence so commanding that even the chandeliers seemed to bow. His shoulders were broad, his frame weathered, his expression carved from stone. His clothes were plain, a simple shirt, worn boots, but he carried an aura that no tuxedo could match, the aura of a man who had stood at the edge of life and returned. This was Marcus Hale, Clara's husband. A decorated soldier, Marcus had served overseas for years. He'd faced fire, loss, and the cruel weight of survival. His name was etched in military honor, his face known to those who admired courage. And though he had come home seeking peace, that night would demand of him a new kind of battle. Marcus's eyes found Clara, found her trembling form, her hands clutching her belly, and something deep inside him, forged in fire, tempered in pain, ignited. He stepped forward. Adrian's sneer faltered as Marcus drew near. For the first time that night, the air felt small. The laughter around his table died. Marcus stopped between Clara and Adrian. He did not raise his fist. He did not shout. He simply stood. His gaze fixed on Adrian's eyes, a gaze heavy with the fury of a man who had seen too much loss, too much cruelty, too much death. Adrian's arrogance wavered. His hands twitched. His face paled. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's Marcus Hale, the soldier, the hero." Recognition rippled through the hall, and in that moment, Adrian understood this was no servant's husband. This was a man the world respected, a man whose strength came not from money, but from sacrifice.
The ballroom air thickened, every guest holding their breath as Marcus stood between Adrian and Clara. The chandeliers flickered, their light catching on crystal glasses that lay shattered across the marble floor. Adrian's lips curled into a sneer, though his eyes betrayed the first flicker of doubt. "And who," he demanded, his voice faltering before he steadied it, "do you think you are, barging in here like some nobody?" Marcus didn't answer at once. His silence was heavier than words. He turned briefly, his calloused hand resting on Clara's shoulder, grounding her. She leaned into him, trembling but safe now, her breath easing with his presence. Then Marcus faced Adrian fully. "I'm her husband," he said, his voice low yet carrying across the room like thunder, "and I'm the man who will not let you harm her again." The words struck deeper than any fist. Guests exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't the outburst of a jealous partner. It was a declaration carved with unshakable certainty. Adrian straightened, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Husband? Then perhaps you should teach your wife to stay out of the way. He stopped. Marcus's stare pinned him mid-sentence. It wasn't anger alone that silenced him, but something heavier. A gaze forged in deserts of war, in nights where every breath could have been the last. Adrian had always lived in comfort, pampered by wealth. He had never faced death, and now in Marcus's eyes, he saw a truth that stripped his arrogance bare. He was fragile. Adrian swallowed hard. For the first time, he looked like a boy trapped in a man's suit. Around the room, murmurs rose. Names traveled from lip to lip until they reached Adrian himself. That's Marcus Hale, the decorated soldier. He saved an entire unit in Helmand. Didn't the president honor him last year? Adrian froze. His chest tightened as he realized the man before him wasn't just a husband. He was known. He was respected. This was a man whose reputation could not be bought or destroyed with money. Clara's hand squeezed Marcus's arm, her eyes wet but steady. She whispered, "I'm all right. The baby's all right." Marcus nodded, but didn't look away from Adrian. He finally broke the silence, his voice calm yet sharp. "You think power comes from money, from fear, from people bowing because of the name you inherited, but you know nothing of power, Adrian." Adrian bristled, but Marcus stepped closer, his shadow falling over him. "Power," Marcus continued, "is standing on a battlefield with nothing but the men beside you, knowing you might not live to see the sunrise, and still moving forward so they can. Power is protecting the weak, not preying on them. Power is sacrifice, and you wouldn't survive a single day where real strength is required." The hall erupted in whispers. Guests shifted in their seats, some nodding subtly, others glancing at Adrian with thinly veiled disgust. Adrian's face reddened. "You can't talk to me like that. Do you know who my father is?" Marcus's reply was ice cold. "Do you know who I am? Because everyone else here seems to." Adrian faltered. For the first time, the air had no retort. Silence settled again, but it was a silence pregnant with judgment. The wealthy elite who had once laughed at Adrian's arrogance now avoided his gaze. A woman in a sapphire gown muttered, "Striking a pregnant woman? There's no excuse." Another guest whispered, "His father can't cover this up." Adrian's friends shifted uncomfortably, no longer laughing, no longer proud to sit beside him. His arrogance, once a shield, now became a cage closing in on him. Marcus took Clara's hand, helping her stand fully. He addressed the room, his voice firm but even. "No man, no wealth, no privilege gives anyone the right to harm another, especially not the vulnerable. Tonight you've seen the truth. Arrogance is not strength. Cruelty is not power. And respect is not bought with gold, but earned through how we treat those who have less." The words cut deeper than Adrian's kick ever could. They hung in the air like a verdict. Adrian's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. His mind screamed for a way out, a sharp remark, a display of bravado, something. But the weight of Marcus's gaze, the judgment of the crowd, and the shame of his own action pressed him down like a mountain. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt powerless. He backed a step away from Marcus. Another. His body betrayed him, trembling despite his desperate attempt to appear unfazed. Clara, though shaken, stood straighter now. The strength in her eyes made Adrian avert his own. He could face armies of sycophants, but not the quiet, unbroken dignity of a woman he had tried to humiliate. Clara touched Marcus's arm again, whispering, "Let's go." Her voice was soft, but to those who heard, it carried a power stronger than any of Adrian's boasts. She didn't demand revenge. She didn't scream or beg. She simply stood, resilient, reminding everyone in the hall that courage was not always loud. Marcus nodded. Together they turned to leave, Clara leaning gently into him, shielded not by violence, but by his presence. Adrian's chest heaved. humiliation burning hotter than fire. Around him, whispers grew. Disgraceful. His father must be furious. Marcus Hale showed more class in 5 minutes than Adrian has his whole life. Adrian tried to speak, to reclaim control, but his voice cracked when he finally managed, "This isn't over." Marcus turned his head just slightly, his eyes narrowing. "It's over when you decide to be a man instead of a spoiled child." Adrian fell silent. The guests didn't applaud, but their silence spoke volumes. It was the silence of judgment, of disapproval, of reputations shifting in real time. Adrian realized, perhaps for the first time, that money could not buy respect. It could not erase shame, and it could not make him bigger than the truth that now hung over him. As Marcus guided Clara toward the exit, a ripple of quiet nods followed them. Some guests even rose slightly in respect, not because Marcus demanded it, but because dignity commands it without asking. Adrian remained frozen, sweat at his temples, his world collapsing inward. In his mind, the words echoed. "You wouldn't survive a single day where real strength is required." And deep down, he knew Marcus was right.
The heavy doors of the Imperial Hotel swung shut as Marcus guided Clara outside. But inside the hall, silence still reigned. No one moved. No one dared to laugh, to clap, or even to sip their champagne. The echo of Marcus's words lingered, and the sight of Adrian's trembling form remained etched in every guest's mind. The chandeliers above gleamed on, but their golden glow now felt hollow. The glitter of diamonds, the fragrance of roses, the polished marble, all seemed smaller in the face of what they had just witnessed. Arrogance stripped bare, dignity shining brighter than wealth. Adrian stood alone, his friends shrinking from his side. For years he had been the star of these gatherings, the loudest laugh, the cruelest tongue, the one others tolerated for the sake of his father's fortune. But now no one dared to stand with him. At the head table, Adrian's father, Charles Davenport, a man whose empire stretched across banks, hotels, and political ties, slowly rose to his feet. His jaw tightened, his gaze, cold and unflinching, bored into his son. "Enough," he said. One word, but it cut through the hall like a blade. Adrian flinched. He had feared his father's wrath more than anything, but never before had it come in front of so many witnesses. Charles adjusted his cufflinks and addressed the crowd. "My son's behavior tonight is indefensible. The Davenport name does not and will not condone such disgrace." Whispers spread. For Charles to openly rebuke his son was unheard of. Adrian's eyes widened. He stammered, "Father, Silence," Charles snapped. His voice thundered louder than the string quartet ever had. "You will leave this hall immediately." Adrian's legs felt like stone. He searched for a lifeline, but none came. Even the servants he once bullied turned away from his gaze. He left the ballroom not as a prince of wealth, but as a boy stripped of pride. Meanwhile, Clara and Marcus sat quietly on the hotel steps outside, away from the glittering spectacle. Clara's hands rested gently on her belly, her breathing steadier now. Marcus kept his arm around her, scanning her face for signs of pain. "You're safe now," he murmured. Clara nodded, her eyes misting. "Safe because of you." Marcus shook his head. "No, because of you. You faced more than anyone knows. You carried yourself with dignity when others would have broken. I just reminded him what real strength looks like." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, but they were not tears of fear.
They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of pride. For so long she had worked unseen, dismissed by the wealthy as invisible, but tonight she had been seen, and not as a victim, but as a woman of quiet strength. By morning, word of the incident had spread across the city. Newspapers carried the story. Millionaire's heir disgraces family at gala. Decorated veteran stands for pregnant wife. The kick that shook the empire. Editorials praised Marcus's restraint and Clara's courage. Talk shows buzzed with debate. Was the Davenport empire crumbling? Could Adrian ever recover from such shame? And in cafes, buses, and workplaces, ordinary people repeated Clara's name with admiration. She had become a symbol, not of weakness, but of resilience. Adrian, meanwhile, spiraled. His father withdrew privileges, cut him from business meetings, and stripped him of the authority he had once flaunted. Former friends stopped answering his calls. His name, once powerful, now carried whispers of contempt. He stormed through his family's mansion, smashing glasses and shouting curses. But anger could not silence the memory of Marcus's eyes, nor could it erase the image of Clara standing taller than him in the eyes of the world. For the first time, Adrian was forced to sit with himself, with the hollowness of a life built on arrogance, with the weight of shame no fortune could wash away. Clara returned to her modest life, continuing her shifts, saving every coin for her baby's future. But something had changed. Customers now treated her with unexpected kindness. Strangers stopped her in the street to thank her for her courage. She didn't crave fame or recognition. All she wanted was peace for her family. But she carried herself with a new grace, a quiet reminder that dignity could turn the tide of even the cruelest injustice. Marcus, too, continued his life humbly. He did not give interviews nor seek glory. He simply held his wife close, cared for her, and prepared to welcome their child into a world he hoped would be kinder. Weeks later, fate brought Marcus and Adrian face to face once more. It was not in a ballroom, but on a quiet city street. Adrian, unshaven, his clothes wrinkled, looked nothing like the arrogant hair of weeks past. He froze when he saw Marcus. Marcus, carrying groceries for Clara, paused but did not step aside. Adrian's throat worked. His pride screamed to walk past, to sneer, to pretend nothing had changed. But his shame won. He lowered his eyes. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry." Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he said, "Don't tell me. Show her. And show your own soul. That's the only apology that matters." Adrian nodded, his voice too weak to respond. For once, there was no arrogance in his step while he walked away. Months passed. Clara gave birth to a healthy baby boy, his first cries filling their small home with joy. Marcus held his son in his arms, whispering promises of protection, guidance, and love. News of Adrian faded, but the story of that night in the Imperial Hotel lingered. It became a tale retold in homes and workplaces, a story parents shared with children to remind them that wealth does not equal worth, and that kindness is the truest strength. And so, friends, remember this. Adrian's arrogance built him a pedestal, but it was fragile and hollow. Marcus's and Clara's love built them a foundation, strong and lasting. When arrogance strikes, it may wound for a moment, but truth, dignity, and kindness endure far longer. Because sometimes the greatest strength is not in the wealth we carry, but in the love we protect. Sometimes the loudest lesson comes not from power, but from humility. And sometimes, as Adrian learned, the truth of another man's heart can shake us more deeply than any fortune ever could. If this story touched you, don't leave just yet. Like this video so more people can hear Clara and Marcus's story. Share it with a friend who believes in kindness, and subscribe to Limitless Tales for more journeys of justice, hope, and the power of the human spirit. Because the world doesn't need more arrogance, it needs more truth and more stories like this one.